Ladies and gentlemen, let me open a special meeting of City Council of City of Pearland for Monday, January the 14th, year 2019. It's hard to believe, isn't it? It really is. Call this to order. New business. Our Councilmember. Or would you?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we adopt the 12 items of new business on the agenda. I make a motion that we adopt those 12 items.
We have a motion and a second.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. This is going to be a little bit of a marathon resolution reading session. As you know, are aware, these are the 12 items referenced by Councilmember Moore, our property acquisition needs for the city to do the McCard Road project. And each one of these resolutions is for a different parcel that we have to acquire, and we're required by law to read each caption almost in its entirety. There's a little bit part of the caption at the end of each one that I don't have to read, but I'm going to be reading those out loud. So if you'll bear with me and be patient, I appreciate it. Thank you. The first resolution is Resolution 2019-1. A resolution of the City of Pearland, Texas, authorizing the power of eminent domain to acquire fee simple title to certain property for the McCard Road Extension Project. Being a 1.903 acre parcel of land located in the R.B. Lyle Survey, Abstract 543, Pearland, Missouri County, Texas. Being out of Lot 51, Section 4, W. Zielinski Subdivision, according to the plat thereof filed in Volume 29, page 43, Missouri County Deed Records. And being out of that certain tract, as described in a deed executed on March 28, 2015 from Jeff E. Fleming Jr. to Lucky 7 McCalla, recorded under Missouri County Clerk's file for the construction and maintenance of road, utility, and drainage improvements on certain real property described herein. Resolution number 2019-2, a resolution City Council, City of Pearland, Texas, authorizing the power of eminent domain to acquire fee simple title to certain property for the McCard Road Extension Project. Being a 0.1821 acre parcel of land located in the HTMB-RR Company Survey, Abstract 237, Pearland, Missouri County, Texas. Being out of Lot 3, Section 5, HTMB Railroad Company Subdivision, according to the plat thereof, as recorded in Volume 28, page 6, Missouri County Deed Records. And being out of that certain called 1.4220 acres tract, as described in a deed executed on March 21st, 2009, from Bartolomeo Garcia to Christina R. Garcia, recorded under Missouri County Clerk's file number 2009-012-462 of the official public records of Missouri County for the construction and maintenance of road, utility, and drainage improvements on certain real property described herein. In resolution number 2019-3, a resolution of the City Council, City of Pearland, Texas, authorizing the power of eminent domain to acquire fee simple title to certain property for the McCard Road Extension Project, being a 0.3679 acre parcel of land located in the W. Dobson Survey, Abstract 187, Pearland, Missouri County, Texas, and out of that certain called 9.715 acre tract, as described in a deed executed on March 30th, 1978, from Glenn R. Stone. Antax, recorded in Volume 1391, page 883, Missouri County Deed Records, for the construction and maintenance of road, utility, and drainage improvements on certain real property described herein. Resolution 2019-4, a resolution of the City Council, City of Pearland, Texas, authorizing the power of eminent domain to acquire fee simple title to certain property from a McCard Road Extension Project, being a 0.5421 acre parcel of land located in the HTMB-RR Company Survey, Abstract 219, Pearland, Missouri County, Texas. Being out of Lot 10, Section 7, Allison Ritchie Gulf Coast Home Company Subdivision, and being out of that certain residue of a called 5 acre tract as described in a deed executed on March 23, 1984 from Maurice B. Hansel to Den Kim Pham et al., recorded in Volume 1768, page 465, Missouri County Deed Records, for the construction, maintenance of road, utility, and drainage improvements on certain real property described herein. Resolution 2019-5, a resolution of the City Council's City of Pearland, Texas, authorizing the power of eminent domain to acquire fee simple title to certain property for the McCard Road Extension Project, being a 0.7569 acre parcel of land located in the HTMB RR Company Survey, Abstract 219, Pearland, Missouri County, Texas, being out of Lot 10, Section 7, Allison Ritchie Gulf Coast Home Company subdivision, and being out of that certain called 1.1183 acre tract as described in a deed executed on August the 4th, 2009 from Lam Mok Lee to Min Thi Vo, recorded under Brazoria County Clerk's File number 2009-042873 of the official public records of Brazoria County, and being out of that certain called 1.1183 acre tract as described in a deed executed on August the 4th, 2009 from Tam Lee to Min Thi Vo, recorded under Brazoria County number 2009-042872 of the official public records of Brazoria County for the construction, maintenance of road, utility, and drainage improvements on certain real property described herein. 2019-6, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Pearland, Texas, authorizing the power of eminent domain to acquire fee simple title to certain property for the McCard Road Extension Project, being a 0.5486 acre parcel of land located in the HTMB RR Company Survey, Abstract 219, Pearland, Brazoria County, Texas, being out of Lot 10, Section 7, Allison Ritchie Gulf Coast Home Company subdivision, and being out of that certain called 0.970 acre tract as described in a deed executed on December 5th, 2006 from Tam Lee to Than Ye Vu, recorded under Brazoria County Clerk's File number 2007-001587 of the official public records of Brazoria County for the construction and maintenance of road, utility, and drainage improvements on certain real property described herein. Excuse me. 2019-7, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Pearland, Texas, authorizing the power of eminent domain to acquire fee simple title to certain property for the McCard Road Extension Project, being a 0.1405 acre parcel of land located in the RB Lyle Survey, Abstract 543, Pearland, Brazoria County, Texas, being out of Lot 51, Section 4, W. Zielinski Subdivision, according to the plat thereof filed in Volume 29, page 43, Brazoria County Deed Records, and being out of that certain called 2.846 acre tract as described in a deed executed on May 26, 1995 from John Blanchard to Don Paul Strong, recorded under Brazoria County Clerk's File for the construction and maintenance of road, utility, and drainage improvements on certain real property described herein. Resolution 2019-8, a resolution, City Council, City of Pearland, Texas, authorizing the power of eminent domain to acquire fee simple title to certain property for the McCard Road Extension Project, being a 0.3479 acre parcel of land located in the HTMB RR Company Survey, Abstract 243, Pearland, Brazoria County, Texas, and out of lots 1 and 17, Section 19, Allison Ritchie Gulf Coast Home Company subdivision, according to the plat thereof filed in Volume 2, pages 23 and 24, Brazoria County plat records, and being out of that certain tract 2 being called 2 acre tract as described in a deed executed on 11/25/2015 from Robert D. Garner to Kevin Chima, as recorded under Brazoria County Clerk's File number 2015-055762, the official public records of Brazoria County, and being out of that certain tract, 1 being called 2.5721 acres as described in a deed executed on November 25th, 2015 from Robert D. Garner to Kevin Chima, as recorded under Brazoria County record number 2015-055762 of the official public records of Brazoria County for the construction and maintenance of road, utility, and drainage improvements on certain real property described herein. Resolution 2019-9, resolution of the City Council of the City of Pearland, Texas, authorizing the power of eminent domain to acquire fee simple title to certain property for the McCard Road Extension Project, being a 0.3329 acre parcel of land located in the HTMB RR Company Survey, Abstract 219, Pearland, Brazoria County, Texas, being out of lots 9 and 10, Section 7, Allison Ritchie Gulf Coast Home Company subdivision, and being out of that certain called 5 acre tract described in a deed executed on July 13th, 1988 from M Trust Corp. Trustee to Texas Underground, Inc., recorded in Volume 570, page 393 of the official public records of Brazoria County, and out of that certain called 1.05 acre tract as described in a deed executed on November 19th, 2001, from Quan Son Vo to Texas Underground Incorporated, recorded under Brazoria County Clerk's file number 01-052887 of the official public records of Brazoria County for the construction and maintenance of road, utility, and drainage improvements on certain real property described herein. R 2019-10, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Pearland, Texas, authorizing the power of eminent domain to acquire fee simple title to certain real property for the McCard Road Extension Project, being a 0.5439 acre parcel of land located in the HTMB RR Company Survey, Abstract 219, Pearland, Brazoria County, Texas, being out of Lot 10, Section 7, Allison Ritchie Gulf Coast Home Company subdivision, and being out of that certain called 0.9703 acre tract described in a deed executed on June 1st, 2010 from Min Thivo to the Lee, recorded under Brazoria County Clerk's file number 2010-025755 of the official public records of Brazoria County for the construction and maintenance of road, utility, and drainage improvements on certain real property described herein. Resolution 2019-11. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Pearland, Texas, authorizing the power of eminent domain to acquire fee simple title to certain property for the McCard Road Extension Project, being a .2390 acre parcel of land located in the R.B. Lyle Survey, Abstract 544, Pearland, Brazoria County, Texas, being out of Lot 19, Section 6, Allison Ritchie Gulf Coast Home Company subdivision, according to the plat thereof, is recorded in Volume 136, page 500, Brazoria County Deed Records, and being out of that certain tract, as described in a deed executed on July 17, 1972, from C.E. Helms to Stanley G. Bradley, recorded under Volume 1129, page 661, for the construction and maintenance of road, utility, and drainage improvements on certain real property described herein. And finally, 2019-12, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Pearland, Texas, authorizing the power of eminent domain to acquire fee simple title to certain property for the McCard Road Extension Project, being a .1365 acre parcel of land located in the F.B. Drake Survey, Abstract 506, Pearland, Brazoria County, Texas, being out of that certain tract one called 1 acre tract as described in a deed executed on March 28, 2012, from Frank G. Wingler to CNF Properties, LP, recorded under Brazoria County Clerk's file number 2012-013796 of the official public records of Brazoria County for the construction and maintenance of road, utility, and drainage improvements on certain real property described herein.
So moved.
Council, have any questions or comments?
Yes, I just had one question as a point of clarification, because I know these are pretty sensitive. On 2019-8, I noticed on the document it was Robert D. Garner, and then later in that same resolution it said Robert D. Gamer, but you did say Garner. I just want to make sure that that's...
Okay. Those are actually copied from the actual transcript and then put in here, so it was probably misprinted in the original document, so it won't affect the actual validity of the resolution, but
Okay.
thank you for bringing it to attention.
Any other comments? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary. We have a
Councilmember
motion
Moore?
on the floor.
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Carbone?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Little? Motion passed 7-0.
That information in the record, we move to adjourn. And normally we start our next meeting at 6:30, and it is 6:33, so I guess we crank it up. Ladies and gentlemen, let me open a regular council meeting, City Council, City of Pearland, for January the 14th, year 2019. If you'll please rise and remove your hats, we'll have an invocation by Councilmember Carbone, and Joel Hardy will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Go without me. Dear Lord, thank you so much for another beautiful day. Thank you for all the blessings that we take for granted each and every day, getting to live here in this great country, state, and city. Be with us tonight. Help us to make the decisions that are pleasing and honoring to you. Be with all those that are out there on the front lines protecting us overseas and all our first responders here at home. And get everybody home safely tonight. And help us not to forget what you did for us. In your name we pray. Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
I want to thank all of you for being here tonight, and we look like we're without a sunshiny afternoon, but I'll be using the same agenda that you might have if you have one. Next item on the agenda will be the roll call, and all of our council members are present with bright and shiny faces. Moving in our agenda to item number 4, which is the citizen comment period. And I'll ask our Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Perez, to lead that issue.
Thank you, Mayor. I've received 4 requests. One is for new business item number 1, so we will wait for that item. The other are general, so we can have you come speak now. So first, I'll call you in the order which I received. Mr. Charles McMurray. I have that right? Mr. McMurray? Chuck McMurray? Sorry. Yes, sir.
That's a difficult name.
Mr. McMurray, if you please state your name and address for the purpose of the record. Please keep your comments 3 minutes. I'll let you know when you have about 30 seconds left.
Charlie McMurray, 5209 Spring Branch Drive, here in Pearland, Texas. Good evening. Is that the first thing I'd like to do is compliment your code enforcement of the city underneath the fire department. Is that they've been a great help in our subdivision over the past several years with some issues that are very difficult for our subdivision to handle. I want to give them my thanks, and hopefully that when you start your budget process next month, that you'll consider that, the importance of that. I sent y'all all an email about the definition of junk vehicles earlier this month, and I appreciate Councilman Hernandez acknowledging that, and I hope that when you have the opportunity that you'll review the definition of junk vehicles, because the way the ordinance is presently written allows for vehicles that are wrecked, inoperative, disassembled to remain on a person's residential property for a protracted period of time, and I wish that y'all would examine that and see if it can be addressed to help maintain the integrity of our subdivision. Could we have zoning, and that it's an issue that will be more explained in the email that I sent to you, and I carbon copied our city attorney on that. Secondly, later on the agenda, you have the Charter Revision Commission to be appointed. Last year, I talked to you about the importance of single-member districts. There's an evolution in democracy, and when you have evolution, Thomas Jefferson talks about the importance of moving along with things changing. If you have evolution and look at single-member districts, that'll help keep it to where the citizens are more fairly represented at that council table. Is that third? Could I only got 180 seconds, so I'm moving through these things fairly quickly, and hopefully y'all are a lot more attentive than I was when I was contemplating some things over there. Lastly, is that the budget. Is that the city sends out these nice calendars every year, and I keep them so I can watch what y'all are spending money on. And somehow the one I got this year didn't have that nice map of the city. Maybe that was missing from mine, or maybe I mistakenly lost it. But what I wanted to talk about was
You have 30
public
seconds,
works.
sir.
Is over the, in the current fiscal year, the public works operations from a total of all your summary of funds decreased to 13.2% from 15.5%. And our debt service went up, and our capital construction went up. What I've noticed over the past decade is, yes, because we're growing, we have lots of capital construction, but we're being very parsimonious, being very cheap, and not providing public works with the needed funds to maintain what you build. You build great Pearland Parkway, you build great Bailey Road, you build a great Magnolia. It has all these street lights real close together, but you don't have the funds to maintain things. Is that, and I'm interested in that because in our subdivision, we have concrete streets, but they were put in 1984, and around the storm sewers, they had infiltration of the storm sewer waters, and Public Works have had to come out and patch at Spring Garden and Spring Branch Drive. Earlier this week, they were very responsive, came out, evaluated the problem, and put an asphalt patch, which to me is temporary. And hopefully, if you'll appropriate the money, they can then have the money to do the appropriate repairs on concrete streets and do the maintenance they will need to do on all of this capital construction that we're doing. If you build it,
Can you please wrap up your comments?
if you build it, you need to maintain it.
Yes, sir.
I'll go back to sleep now.
Thank you, sir. All right, next, Miss Janelle Tarr. Ma'am, if you can please state your name and address for the purpose of the record. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds left.
Okay. My name is Janelle Tarr. I live at 5303 Leggett Lane in Pearland, Texas, in the great community of Corrigan. I come here tonight because I want to talk to you about something that has been an ongoing issue. I moved to Pearland 2 years ago. In doing so, I thought that I was providing my children with a safe environment in which they could thrive. Unfortunately, the neighborhood in which I live proves to be a large stumbling block to securing that dream that I came here for. The speed through our neighborhood needs to be addressed. Just the other night, my 5-year-old son and I were out taking a walk, and we were almost struck by a car while we were walking out in the neighborhood. This is not the first time that this has occurred. I have witnessed vehicles use our neighborhood as a cut-through, and this has only become worse with the new light that's been added on McLean. I've seen vehicles blow by students walking to or from Jameson Middle School, and the school speed limit only extends just to the entrance point of our neighborhood, and then after that, the students are on their own. I've seen vehicles roll through stop signs and come tearing around corners that have nearly struck kids off of their bikes. I have called the police. I have talked to the City of Pearland. I have signed petitions, but nothing has changed. I ask that my concern at least be put on the record here. I also ask for you to consider the power and authority that you have to bring about an action through your power and advocacy. I ask you to help me protect our kids before we look back on my plea in hindsight. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, Miss Melissa Andreas. Thank you, ma'am. If you'll please state your name and address for the purpose of the record. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds left.
Melissa Andreas. My address is 5305 Leggett Lane here in Pearland. Came with Ms. Tarr tonight. The speed situation, the safety concerns on the streets of Corrigan neighborhood have been an ongoing issue. I first moved to Pearland in 2013. I've only been here for 5 years, little over 5 years. and I have seen this city absolutely bloom. It's been beautiful, and I love it. I have great shopping. My children have amazing activities that they can do. But with that also comes a lot more residents, and we have a lot more vehicles on the road. Our neighborhood was built in the 70s, I think. And in the 70s, not a problem. There were not that many vehicles in that neighborhood. 30 miles an hour through that neighborhood was no problem. Now, we don't have sidewalks in 75% of our neighborhood. Our children are forced. They cannot ride a bus to Jameson Middle School. We live too close. No bus service is even offered. I'm a working parent. I don't have the time and availability to take my children to and from school every single day. So my children have to walk. It's good exercise for them. It keeps them moving. I think it's great. I think a child should be able to walk to and from school if they live close enough. We're within half a mile. Because there are no sidewalks, they are forced to walk in the street. There are cars parked on both sides of the street. As Ms. Tar said, our neighborhood is used as a cut-through from Fight to 518. There are a lot of vehicles that drive through there very aggressively because they are using it as a cut-through. They're trying to get through very quickly. I have had vehicles on my butt. I've stopped my car in the middle of the road and told them to back off. My children, I have a 11-year-old son, excuse me. He has experienced times where irate drivers, he's asked them, yelled at them as they sped by, hey, slow down. They actually put their car in reverse, went all the way back to him, and threatened an 11-year-old child. That doesn't fly in my book, and I'm sorry. This is an issue, and I don't want something to happen to one of our children because the speed limit couldn't be addressed. Ideally, in a perfect world, it would be 20 miles an hour and everything would be hunky-dory and okay. I personally do not drive over 20 miles an hour in that neighborhood because it is not safe. Again, vehicles on both sides of the road, you can only fit one car through. You can't see people in between those vehicles that are walking their children, their animals, just enjoying some outdoor air. And something needs to happen because our children, my son doesn't feel safe going to and from his friend's house in our own neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. That's all of the general public comments we have, Mayor.
Okay, appreciate that. Moving in our agenda to item number 5 on our agenda. Public hearings. There are none tonight. Consent agenda, which consists of, I believe, 4 items. And I ask Councilmember Carbone if he'd present these for our consideration. Before he does, are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda? You're none.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Consideration and possible action, approval of consent agenda items A through D. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Secretary? do we have-
Councilmember Carbone?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed? Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Little?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Motion passed 7-0.
Moving in our agenda, item 6, matters removed from the consent agenda. There were none. Moved to item 7 is new business. New business item 1, Councilmember Reed, would you present this for our consideration?
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration and possible action, first reading of ordinance number T-29. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We're discussion. Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You may recall back in November, we had a joint public hearing with the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding this particular item. And as a result of that discussion and the direction from council and the comments from the Planning and Zoning Commission, we've made modifications to what we brought to you at that time for massage establishments. As we understood it, what you wanted were clarification on operating hours, operating hours limitations. You wanted clarification of transparent front window treatments, clarification on door locking requirements, the ability for licensed police officers or code enforcement officers to be able to enter the facility. And then you wanted the ability, if in fact there were violations, to be able to pull the CUP or certificate of occupancy. Those changes have been made in regards to the ordinance. And in just a moment, we'll have a presentation kind of clarifying that a little bit. Another item that we discussed at that particular time related to the UDC Chapter 4 regarding tree mitigation. There were also some issues that were brought up at that particular time where council wanted the potential of additional tree credits based on landscaping and the size of trees that were planted, as well as some additional consideration. Those amendments have also been made. And at this time, what we'd like to do is I'd like to ask Martin Griggs to provide us with a brief presentation and overview of the recommended changes to both the ordinance for the massage establishments and the UDC tree mitigation amendments. Clarence?
Yes,
Or Martin?
Yes, sir. So that was a great lead off. Kind of took a whole bunch of my points off, but we'll go from there. P&Z recommended this item back in November with a vote of 6-1. After the joint public hearing, we reached out to several organizations, Unbound, Heart of Texas Coalition, and the police department to further vet our conditions and the definition thereof. This is what we came back with. We brought in line the definition for massage establishment with the Code of Ordinances and the way Texas State regulates massage practitioners. We then amended the operation hours. Originally, it was intended to be from 9 to 9, but there are some locations that are open either earlier or later. So we changed that to 8 to 10 in order to not create additional nonconformities. We clarified the text for transparency of windows, added in an exception that's within the Texas Occupations Code for solo practitioners. And then, as Mr. Branson had discussed, granted authority for the peace officers and code enforcement to go out and carry out their inspections. And to end the conditions that are listed within the ordinance, that gives the allowance to revoke future conditional use permits and certificates of occupancy for violation of any of these rules. Next, we've got the tree credits, and I wanted to bring you up to speed on that. What you see before you is an example of a tree survey that we received during the development review process. Tree mitigation comes into effect when we have a lot that has a lot of trees on it, and they need to make way for some future development by removing those trees. Some of them could potentially be protected trees. Those protected trees are what create tree credits and tree mitigation requirements. So just to give you an idea of where we start out. The proposed text amendment would create 3 ways of reducing that mitigation fee and reducing the number of inches that are required to be mitigated for. The first is by allowing larger trees to be planted. This would account for up to 25% reduction. The next would be allowing credit toward landscaping by preserving existing trees or shrubs as long as they meet a location requirement. So those existing trees would have to be within either a landscape strip or within a required buffer. And then the third would be allowing preserved trees between 6 and 11 inches to be maintained. And that would also give up to a 25% reduction. Along with that, we include pine trees as being allowed to count for mitigation credit. thus reducing the number of inches that would be required to be planted or to be paid out in fee. I know that was a quick run through, but that completes my staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Martin, thank you for the overview of that. We'd be pleased to answer any questions that you might have, but Mr. Mayor, I wanted to remind you that we do have one public comment. Mr. Lorfing?
Thank you. Mayor, we do have one individual that'd like to speak on this item, Mr. Daryl Eisenberg. He'll come up to the mic. If you'll please state your name and address for the purpose of record, please keep your comments to 3 minutes. I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds left.
Daryl Eisenberg, 1406 Silver Maple Lane, Pearland, Texas. I'm going to be reading a statement from Carrie Taylor. We were texting today on this issue, and she asked me if I would read this to the city council. I would like to read a statement on behalf of Carrie Taylor, Executive Director of Unbound and an anti-human trafficking organization in our city. The office is at 1365 East Broadway here in Pearland. We're Unbound Houston would like to thank the council for their thoughtful, provocative work on this proactive work on this effort. We are thankful to have input on. I hate this stuff. Let me see. We are Unbound Houston would like to thank the council for their thoughtful, proactive work on this effort. We are thankful to have input on the wording of this statement and a small role in the discussion of ideas leading to the most effective wording for our community. You have all been responsive, purpose-driven, and protective of all your constituents as you hammered out the least restrictive but necessary language. We applaud your efforts and hope that the CUP can be replicated in other communities, starting with the rest of Brazoria County. For discussion purposes, we still support language that prohibits employees of these designated massage business from spending the night on premises. We do not want the addition of that language to slow the process. We would like the policy to be adopted, implemented, and enforced as soon as possible in order to protect potential victims of human trafficking and to deter those who trafficking in person for setting up shop in our cities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor, that completes all of the public comments.
Completes those, okay. Does the council have any further comment or question? Staff? Hearing none, we have. I'm sorry. I didn't see that.
Yeah, I guess, John, could you clarify in terms of residing overnight? That language is in there, correct?
It is not, because currently that would be illegal in a business to reside in a commercial area in a business. So that, while we originally did consider language, it was a recommendation that was not specifically necessary to be stated.
Okay. We do repeat things all the time. Staff
Yes, sir.
brings to us all the time. I hear what you're saying. Does it hurt putting it in there?
I would defer that to the city attorney.
I think what John was getting to is that when you get an occupancy permit, it's going to be for a business or commercial use or residential use. And so consequently, somebody living or staying in a business use would be a violation of their occupancy permit, and so is not allowed. So that being said, I mean, obviously, let's say somebody's working late and they fell asleep on the chair in their office or something. That's not what that's designed to get at. It's really designed to get somebody who's habitually staying and turning in essentially to a residence. And so that's why our occupancy permits address that already. So it would not be allowed under our current regulations. To get to your specific question, can you add it into this? Yes, you could.
And I think anybody that was thinking, if someone was thinking about opening up this type of establishment and they go to our codes, I'd rather have it listed out there. I don't see the downside of it. And thank you for clarification. So if I fall asleep reviewing tax returns, I won't be in violation.
Not a problem.
All right.
If the council would like to add that, then if you could do so just through the recommendation, through a motion of an amendment to the current recommendation.
I'll make a motion to add the language to restrict the residing overnight.
One
Second.
I got a couple of comments that may end up further amending it.
Well, there's a motion and a second on the floor now, so
Yes.
Okay.
a new motion and a second on the floor.
If the council would concur in allowing the remainder of the comments to, if it could be added to that, we would have to come back to this motion and vote on it if it's not amended further, but we could amend that motion further if the council wants to proceed and get other comments.
And my other question was, the vote was 6-1. What was the one no vote, or did they say?
The one no vote wanted further clarification on the definition and didn't feel quite comfortable with the current definition. So that's why they voted that way.
Okay.
We've since been back and forth with them, and they're more comfortable with it now.
All right. Thank you.
Is any other comments before we move to the motion?
Yes, Mayor. Just got a
Okay.
couple on the massage ordinance. So the way it reads, the paragraph or the end of the paragraph says the term also does not apply to establishments that provide massage services in the common area which are visible to the patrons of the respective establishment. So I take that as we're saying if massage is given as a service, as an auxiliary service to another establishment, that's not their primary get. So if they cut hair and they give you a back massage, that doesn't require you to have a CUP, correct?
Yes, sir. So a hair salon that maybe as part of that gives you a massage, or a nail salon, or a place that might add that as an additional service, but as long as it's out in the open and secondary to the main service, then they would not be required.
So I'd just like to clarify that by maybe modifying that, amending this to where we make the statement that it is an auxiliary service. Say the term does not apply to an establishment that provide massage as an auxiliary service to another primary service, and performs massages in open areas. The way that reads, I'm afraid it may end up giving up a loophole where, hey, we don't need CUP because we do this in a common area, because the wording doesn't specifically state it's auxiliary to another primary service. Unless, Darren, you think that there's something I'm overlooking.
Anytime we can clarify something so that everybody understands exactly what we're trying to do, I'm always for it. And what you're talking about makes sense. We don't want to imply that somebody, just because massages are occurring in an open area, that it's not a massage establishment.
Okay.
So it would have to be auxiliary or supplemental massage services that are, again, secondary to a primary service, a different service that's being provided. Is that what you're indicating?
Yeah, I'd just like that clarification so we know it is only for auxiliary services to another primary service. So I'll offer that amendment to tag on to Member Carbone's. On the tree ordinance, we state the preserved tree must be protected species with a diameter of breast height is 6 inches and no more than 11 inches. Can you provide me clarity on what the 11-inch cap is for?
Yes, sir. So the reason why we're doing a 6-inch to 11-inch cap is it's to encourage smaller trees to be preserved. Most of the time, smaller trees are what are removed, and the larger trees are worked around in the site plan. So by giving an incentive to keep smaller trees, we're hopefully encouraging them to work around smaller trees for the development.
So would we read this, if you preserve a 12-inch tree or a 24-inch tree, you're not giving credit for preservation of that tree?
Other than credit towards required landscaping, yes, but towards mitigation and reduction, no, no, sir.
Okay. And we think that's necessary in order to encourage, we need to put the 11-inch cap in order to encourage them to keep the smaller trees?
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay. That's all I have, Mayor. Again,
That's all you have? Okay.
I'd like to ask Member Carbone if he'll amend his motion to include the language that we just discussed.
Since the motion you originally made was, has been way beyond what we had in the way of addressing it in an immediate fashion, would you restate the motion? Because we've had a lot of discussion since you made that option.
Maybe I should hold off and hear the rest of the comments, and I'll restate it at the end.
Yeah, okay, no.
Make sense? All right.
I had a question kind of, maybe that's related to what Member Perez brought up with these non-primary services. I had looked into maybe some other types of establishments as well, and I wanted to maybe provide some clarification on how we can address the different terms that are used for these types of businesses. I found that maybe some other terms used for these types of establishments include spa, modeling studio, things like that. And so how can we hopefully take into consideration what Member Perez said, as well as maybe apply it to some other sections of UDC in the future?
That's a great question, because I think these types of businesses, and I use the term loosely business, but when they try to operate illegally in this manner, they obviously want to try to associate themselves with a use that's legally permitted so that they can appear that way. And right now, if we wanted to do that, and I think that's something the council could consider, I think that would have to be through another UDC amendment, because it's going to be something, a different provision of our table of permitted uses that's not, that was not part of this proposed amendment to the UDC that was on the agenda. For instance, I believe the types of use you talk about for a spa, that falls under the same category as barber type uses. It falls in that under the table of permitted uses. And so if the council wanted to consider doing CUP for those types of uses and have the same restrictions, that's something we could consider at a future meeting. I'm not quite certain on the modeling studios and where that would fall under a table of permitted uses, but I'm aware on the other one. And so, but that is something that could be considered at a future meeting.
Okay, thank you. And then I had there was an email that was sent to us back on November 27th by Mr. Joe Madison. And I read through some of the points that he made in the email. One of the things that kind of stood out, and maybe I'd like to put up for consideration, is that he has a point in here that says landlords would be required to provide a signed consent and approval for massage therapy establishment permit applications upon their property. And that was something that I've encountered even in the shopping center where my business in Pearland is, where I had a conversation with the landlord saying, are you aware of this? And they, were not aware of the, this type of business that did exist in our shopping strip several years ago. So I think, at least from that perspective, it would be good to notify the landlords that maybe there is a conditional use permit before council, and that, these are the provisions that, we've gone over and want to make them aware of, so that they can also familiarize themselves, as well as maybe get them involved in the process and lend some additional burden, maybe to the types of businesses wanting to come in that we're trying to prohibit. So,
And just to clarify, did you want a requirement that the landlords be contacted, or is that something that you're recommending that staff do to reach out to the landlords of the shopping centers where one of these establishments may be located?
well, maybe actually, I guess it would be worthwhile to clarify. It looks like they've got a whole list of things that their organization has provided, but at least on here it says would establish prior knowledge. I guess it could be something that staff would do. I don't know. We'd have to make it a requirement, but
I would just add that we do, through the CUP process, we would mail out notices to all property owners within 250 feet. So they would get notice that a CUP for massage establishments have been applied for. And then I believe we do require that if it's a tenant space or rental space, that the landlord signs off on the application now.
I guess the intent of this maybe is that they are notified not just that there's a CUP on that property, but also that it's a specific use, that maybe there are some other things that are attached to that they should know about. And so I think in this instance where we do have this concern, if there's some other type of language we get attached to it to say, hey, we've got a business coming in, we just wanted to make you aware that these are some things that we're trying to prevent coming into the city. Could you maybe go through this checklist or be just aware of the things that we've put forth into the CUP process to try to prevent these types of establishments, so that way they're aware and they could offer more scrutiny to those people trying to, open the businesses. And if, they're a legitimate massage establishment, then so be it. And the landlord has, advance notice of that. But if not, the landlord also has notice that maybe they should ask a few more questions, maybe build something into their lease to limit their own liabilities. I don't know what, would be attached to it, but just to give them a heads up of some of the things that we've discussed, I think, in another type of plain language document, if that's possible.
I don't want to speak for the planning staff, but I think clearly staff can do that. I think first you look at the number of businesses that would have to be reached out to make them aware of that now there's a CUP in your shopping center. Here are some additional requirements that are going to apply to these businesses. Just wanted you to be aware of that. That's one thing. I think the concern would be that from a global standpoint, because we get CUPs all the time that may have additional restrictions on those CUPs, and we typically don't reach out to each and every landlord on all the different requirements. And so we would be doing it here more as a courtesy to make them aware because we do have a much larger list of restrictions on this CUP than we would on typical CUPs. So I'll defer to planning if you feel like that would be too burdensome.
Yeah, and I feel that the reason why this is important, not just to try to prevent it from coming in, but it also has a detriment on the shopping center itself, the neighbors, just the neighborhoods that surround it. When people know that there is an establishment like this in a particular shopping center, that has potential to affect all the businesses there. And so I just feel as though, landlords would appreciate the heads up.
I guess my first thought is I think that the vast majority of businesses that apply for a CUP under massage establishments are going to be the ones that follow the rules, that ethically know what the state calls for and will do that. I would be careful about treating one business differently in how we do mail outs and what we notify versus all CUPs. So if we're going to change the rules so we send every letter out for every CUP that says these are the requirements that may affect this business, versus just this. So we do have a process. This letter to everybody, every property owner gets within 250 feet will say request for a conditional use permit for a massage establishment. So those property owners will know that a massage place will be potentially coming in, have the opportunity to be invited to speak at a public hearing if they have issues or they see issues about that. So that would be my concern, is just that we're establishing regulations, we're strengthening obviously this one more than others, but then to get into the notification and what we're doing would feel to an extent like we're targeting one business over the others. And I would just think that we wouldn't be treating our businesses in the same situation similarly.
And I'm not sure that from this, at least the perspective that I have on this particular item, is that we're not targeting the business as much as we're trying to target the action of human trafficking is, I think, the catalyst for all of this discussion, correct? And I think that would be why we would notify people, because, just thinking of a massage establishment, most people wouldn't put that, two and two together to think, oh, well, it could be a front for, some type of illegal activity or something like that. I don't think that we have that type of issue with, any other business, convenience store, dollar store, auto repair shop. I don't think that, there's a reason why we've got this particular item before us with this particular language. So at least until, we can show they're making a concerted effort to actually address the underlying issue, I don't think that we're necessarily singling out a business as much as we are singling out a type of activity that's basically causing this entire discussion.
My thoughts, I agree with, they're having to do so many notices now. This is going to be an exception. Like when we try to annex somebody, we have to put the school districts on notice. It's like the subset of a subset. I think with what the regulations we've got, we're going to pass tonight, hopefully. I think it goes a long way. I appreciate that list and where Joe's coming from, but correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm a landlord, I have to sign that application anyway, consenting to somebody. So I'm hearing you say, hey, we want to tell you that a massage establishment may mean this, this, and this. I would hope that landlords know that. And I don't know, it just seems like quite a bit of overkill. And I think with just the fact that's a CUP and the 200-foot notice, that's going to get everybody's attention around. So I don't know. I'd hate to put that extra burden on staff. I think there's enough light shining on this issue, just being a CUP, that it's going to take care of it. That's my opinion.
And I can appreciate that. I think that we feel like there's a lot of light shining on it because the people that know about it do bring up a lot of these points and do have a lot of in-depth discussion with us. But to say that we hope that landlords would know this, I don't know that landlords do because...
Well, the landlords will be standing in front of us for a CUP. I mean, all the applicants, it's the light will be shining on every case, just like a gas station or something else that's coming in. There's going to be plenty of public notice. And anyway.
I would tend to agree with Member Carbone, and I think if they want to lease to a massage establishment, then in short order they'll recognize that there's a heightened concern about this, as there are with liquor stores and other uses that require CUP. I don't think sending them a preemptive letter now, one, it's a moment in time when we assume they're going to read the letter and understand what it means, and that they'll remember that in 5 years when they wish to have a CUP. I just don't. I think that what we've done now is a good move. I don't think that the extra effort, putting staff through the extra effort, is really going to. It'll cost us a lot of time and a fair amount of money to mail it to everybody. I don't think it's a whole lot of. There's not a whole lot of add positive to it. I appreciate the sentiment. I just don't. I don't think it's a necessity.
I mean, saying that it costs a lot of time and money, I mean, it's a letter to a landlord. I don't know that that's necessarily a lot of time, effort, money. If we can get a standardized form put together when we have these types of things before us, it's just you print it out, stick an envelope, and stick it, what is it, 50-something, 54 cents, and it's there. I don't know that I see that as a burden. Heck, I'll volunteer to do it. How about that?
I have a couple of quick comments on the exception to the operational hours for the existing businesses, allowing them to operate past 10 p.m. Just to have an idea, how many massage parlors do we have in existence that currently operate after 10 p.m.? Or those businesses offering massages as an ancillary or auxiliary service?
We know of, we just checked a few websites for times. Not every massage establishment, even the ones who operate legally under the current rules, have websites, but we did see that some opened at 8 and some opened at 10. If we had changed those rules and went with 9 to 9, that would only affect either businesses moving forward or those businesses that were already in between 9 to 9. So the businesses that opened before 9 or stayed open later than 9 would get to continue to operate at those hours, therefore, one, creating a nonconformity with the code, and two, allowing them to an extent, a business benefit because nobody else could compete with them at those hours.
So we don't currently have any that stay open past 10?
Past 10 that we can tell are open before 8. So that's why we tried to keep it at those hours. And they were still, to an extent, tied to other businesses, restaurants, or some retail centers open till into the 9 to 10. So we felt that was appropriate.
Okay, the second thing, on the transparent glass on the front of the business, what would keep a business, and I've seen businesses like this before, where as soon as you go in the door, they have a wall that's maybe 3 feet from the glass window, and then they have a second wall that's 5 feet from the glass window, and you just kind of go around them. You're really blocking what the business is doing by setting up that type of barrier. Are we going to do anything about that?
Well, we try to clarify that by stating that there is a prohibition about creating an obstructed view, so that if you put up a bookcase or temporary wall or some other structure that prohibits somebody walking by from seeing into that area, then that would be a violation of the regulations.
How far back can those obstructions be?
It would be our interpretation that that entryway or that foyerway would entirely have to be viewable from the outside.
Are you saying that a person getting massage has to be viewable from the outside?
No, because typically you walk into an area where there's a receptionist, and then you go back into another room for your massage. So if it's a sole business, then they would be all right. They wouldn't have that area. But for a Massage Heights, a Massage Envy, or any of those typical spas that include massage, the entryway would have to be open and accessible from a viewing standpoint.
Thank you, because I don't want to see Woody getting a massage. Okay.
Actually, that brings up another point, which I think is maybe kind of not silly, but it may be a little nitpicky. Can we maybe clarify also that if there is something inside the door, that maybe we're talking floor to ceiling and not maybe 3 feet off? Because I know from I've worked a lot in Asia. From a feng shui perspective, a lot of these business owners, it is common practice to put something right inside the door to help direct the flow of energy. And I know that's kind of a big thing, like, a massage and stuff like that, is the energy flow is very important to these types of businesses. So they will have something like a small water wall or a bookshelf or something just inside the door to control the flow of energy kind of coming in outside. So I think, definitely saying if they're putting up a wall, floor to ceiling, where you can't see beyond that at all, but if they've got something that's maybe, a couple feet tall or something like that, that we can just clarify that.
I would think that under the rules is written that anything, like even a plant or something that you could see around or see through, that didn't wholly obstruct the view, where business could be handled behind, then that wouldn't be an issue. So something as you're describing, I think would fall as an allowance under this proposed code.
Okay. Well, because I mean, that would be, if somebody puts something up that's 5 feet. I mean, if you're, 5 feet tall or 5'2", that could obstruct your view. But not if you're 6 feet.
But they're not going to have it the whole length of the storefront.
Yeah, but he said, what if it's in front of the door?
Yeah, but
I mean,
you
it
can
just
see
depends on
around
the
it.
layout.
Though. But you can see around it, so it would be allowed.
If you step in. Yeah. I don't know. I've had a lot of run-ins with very particular inspectors in the past. So, I'm just trying to make sure that.
I just have a couple of comments. I mean, I thought when we first made these amendments or suggestions for these amendments, it was to protect the public from what we already have and any incoming because of like sex trafficking. And I don't know if any massage parlor owners are here, but I mean, it seems like we're really concerned about them now, and they're not here really speaking up for themselves. I think what staff proposed and what we had was good. I mean, there was an amendment. We got like 3 motions on the table. I'm not really. We're getting real detailed and into the weeds about trying to protect these parlor owners and make them right. When I mean, a lot of them are not doing right by us. And so, if somebody wants these things changed, I mean, let them come back to change them. But right now, the purpose of this, at least. I could be way off, but the purpose of this was to make sure that we stop trafficking, that we control the things that the public came here and voiced their concerns about, a month ago. Now we're worried about the way the energy looks, and if we got, we're going into the weeds on this. I mean, everyone obviously has their time to talk, but I mean, let's not forget why this is on here.
Sounds like we're running out of something to talk about.
We got some more stuff, Mayor.
You got some stuff.
I just have a quick question, because I don't see anywhere in here where it would allow this, and that would be if there's and I know we talked a little bit about it, but an establishment, say a barber shop or a nail salon or something like that, that offered massage and had like a single room or something to be able to do that, but that's not their main practice. That's not the main thing they're doing. Where in here will that be allowed to be done?
If they had a separate room where, so if you went into a nail salon and they wanted to take you into a back room to do a massage, then they would need to get a CUP. If they, as part of that service, if you're getting a pedicure and they massage your calves, that's allowed, it's open, it's in the public, it's where everybody's getting service. But at that point where they take you back into another room where nobody can see what's going on, then I would say you would need to get a conditional use permit.
And that would be for any new business,
For any
not
new
existing.
This does not affect any business currently operating in the city of Pearland. This only affects new businesses.
Okay, so then my next question is if I was to open up a barber shop and I wanted to have a massage room to be able to offer that massage, I'm not licensed by the state. And there's nowhere in here that tells me that I have to come do that.
If you're giving a traditional, what we say is a massage, then you are not licensed by the state, then you're violating state law, because the state does require you to be a licensed massage therapist to give a quote unquote massage, a true body massage. So that would be a different avenue of enforcement.
So I guess my question is, where do we catch that at?
It would be the same for anybody who's doing an illegal massage. The traditional, I would say that the traditional entity that's violating the rules of the ones we're targeting is not the one that's going to come in here and get a CUP and invite the city, police department, and code enforcement officers into their business to see what they're doing. They're going to make it look like they're not doing massage in there and try to get away with it because they're doing illegal activity. And so that's where we turn to the police department and who have targeted such activity in the past and will continue to target such activity.
Okay, I'm just asking that question because I know that there are places in the city that are like that.
Yes, sir.
And I mean, they're not technically a legal practice, but I'm just asking, where do we catch those type of things when they come in to get a CUP, when they say, I'm going to open up a barber shop and there's no other questions asked, yet they will open up their business and have that, and then clearly they'll be in violation, but nobody told them that.
I mean, that's a violation of state law. If you're giving a massage and you're not licensed.
Well, I understand that, but I mean,
We're not in charge of making sure everybody knows everything. If I'm going to go open a business of washing cars, I'm going to figure out where I can discharge my soapy water. I mean, that's part of my due diligence. So it's not, in my opinion, it's not the city's job to dot all the I's and cross all the T's to make sure somebody's not breaking a state law.
okay, so they can open up and then we find it later, we'll shut it down.
Hey, that would be part of the inspection process.
And that happens.
And that was my question, where do we catch that? And if that's in the inspection process, then that's fine.
I mean, if,
Well, we'll also get a set of plans for the development. If it's got an enclosed room inside an area that's dedicated for, I mean, it shows what it's doing and they're not doing, requesting a CUP, that would be one example. When we get phone calls, et cetera, and the police department goes out and realizes that that's what's going on, then that's another example where we can shut them down. So there are going to be some cases where the information doesn't come through on a set of plans and we find out about it after the fact, and that's what we have that's why we're making these recommendations.
No, I was just going to ask Tony what was his amendments again, so we can go ahead and do that.
Thank you. To clarify, my amendment is to add language defining auxiliary services as discussed, and then also adding the language to not allow for any staff or employee residing overnight.
Yes, and just to clarify that, I believe specifically in the definition of massage establishment, it was the last sentence, which if read literally could be more broadly interpreted, and so that's where we would need to clarify that it was referring to auxiliary services, that it would be exempt, and so we can clarify that, and then also prevent any residency or dwelling overnight stays in the establishments as well.
you would need specific instructions from us on what that clarification needs to be. Y'all are clear?
Yeah, we're clear.
And I do get that that's a repeat of other codes, but I've let y'all do it before. So, that was my motion, Mayor.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any particular additional comments to that from anyone?
This is an amended motion, Mayor, we have on the floor, and we do have a motion and a second.
Yes, we have a
Councilmember
motion on the floor,
Carbone?
Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed? Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Little?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Amended motion passed 7-0.
Now, is that the amended motion or is that the amendment?
That's amended. Now we need the amended motion.
Now we need to pass the amended motion.
Yes, that was on the proposed amendment, and now we will vote on the amended motion.
Are there any comments or suggestions on the amended motion? Hearing none, we have an amended motion on the floor. Mr. Secretary?
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Little? Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Carbone?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0 as amended.
Moving in our agenda to item number 2, consideration of possible action regarding appointment to the Charter Review Commission. Mr. Councilmember Perez, would you present this for our consideration?
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration possible action, resolution number R 2019. I'm sorry, regarding appointment of 2019 Charter Review Commission. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We're in discussion. Staff report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, council members. As you know, it's that time of year. It's January 2019, so it is time to appoint the next Charter Review Commission. The last time the city had a Charter Review Commission was in 2013, and prior to that, it was 2009. The Charter Review Commission is exactly that, as it states. They review the city's charter, and they make recommendations to the city council. Then the city council takes those recommendations and ultimately decides which of those recommendations they want to submit to the voters so that the charter could be amended. It can only be amended by election. And tonight, the council would be charged with the responsibility at your first meeting in January to appoint the 5-member Charter Review Commission. Typically, in the past, the council appoints the 5 members, and then the mayor has selected from that group a chairperson to chair the meeting of the Charter Review Commission. The Charter Review Commission, just so you'll know, they meet for a period, it's a 6-month commitment, and they meet periodically over the next 6 months to determine what recommendations they want to make. And just so you'll know that the recommendations they make, once they're made, they get put into a final report, presented to council, published in the paper, and then ultimately, when it does go to the voters, it would not go to the voters until the May of 2020 election. So I just wanted to give you sort of a little timeline. And so it's a 1-year process just to get through to the point so that we can get to next year and know which charter amendments would be proposed, if any, to go to the voters. So I'll pass it back to you, Mayor. If y'all have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Okay. You know, the selection of the candidates were, I thought, very good. And we had 2 of the members who had served on previous Charter Review Commissions. But in reviewing the candidates as presented, have you given out the names yet at this point? Are you going to do that?
No, Mayor, I'll be happy to read that. As council's aware, you know, each council member had a nomination to the board, and then the council had did individual rankings, and then of course that was compiled into a cumulative ranking. And right now the 5 members that were the highest ranked on that cumulative ranking were, in no particular order, Michael Wills III, Gerald Koza Jr., E. Craig Slater, Ruby Lee Sanders, and Paul Eskine.
Okay. With that list in front of us, you know, we will be presenting this to the City Council in about June of this year, I believe. So 6 months from today, I think it's about June or July. And with the idea that we have 5 selected candidates and we have 7 council members, one of the items that we suggest and will request be on the agenda for the Charter Commission is to make it 7 candidates for each of the council members to be able to vote and have a candidate on there, since the legal documentation now says that it only requires and can only permit 5. With that information in the record, looking at the candidates, I choose Craig Slater as the chairman for this coming year.
We picking the chairman?
As the mayor's appointment. And I'd ask the council to verify that with that motion.
I'm sorry, Mayor, just to clarify, it would be, since this is being adopted as a minute order, I would recommend that there be amendment to the motion just to clarify who the 5 members that are being appointed would be, and then in that record reflect the mayor's appointment as the chairperson as being Craig Slater.
With that being said, I will amend my motion to be that council appoint, in no particular order, Michael Wills III, Gerald Koza Jr., E. Craig Slater, Ruby Lee Sanders, and Paul Eckstein to the Charter Review Committee, and that Mr. E. Craig Slater be appointed as chair.
Second.
It is a motion.
And a
Did I
second.
hear a second on that? Okay,
Yes, sir.
we do have a second. Mr. Chairman,
Councilmember Perez,
Terry?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Aye.
Councilmember Little, Councilmember Moore,
Aye.
Councilmember Owens,
Aye.
Councilmember Carbone,
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Amendment passed 7-0.
And if I could, Mayor, just state for the record that these members will be reached out to, and they'll probably reach out to find out when they can meet for their initial meeting, and we'll get the ball rolling with the committee as soon as possible, and we'll be providing updates to the council on those meetings as they proceed.
Okay.
Could we also provide some clarification as well on members that were not appointed, their opportunity to participate in the process?
Yes, and just to clarify, as the mayor indicated, there were 7 individuals who had applied and were nominated, to serve on this commission, and all 7 of them have excellent credentials and will do a great job. And so I would encourage not only those individuals who were nominees to this process, but also any individuals in the public who are interested in the charter review process to attend those meetings, and you'll get there'll be notices of those meetings. It's a different type of process. The charter is actually sort of the city's constitution, and so what we're really doing is amending the city's constitution. And it's an important process that public involvement is essential. And so the individuals, all the 7 individuals that were nominated, Donald Hayes and Buck here also was nominated as well. And so I would encourage all individuals to try to participate and get involved in this process.
Any further current concerns about the process tonight? That in the record, let's move to item 3 on our agenda.
Mayor, we still have a motion on the floor that was
I'm
amended. We need to call the vote on it.
We have a motion on the floor.
Yes, Mayor, there was a motion to amend, and so the vote that just occurred a while ago was 7-0 vote was
Motion to
on the
amend,
proposed amendment, and now we'll have to vote on the amended motion.
I think I passed up that one. Okay.
Councilmember Perez,
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Aye.
Councilmember Little, Councilmember Moore,
Aye.
Councilmember Owens,
Aye.
Councilmember Carbone,
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Motion passed as amended, 7-0.
We have an amended motion on the floor. Does council have any question or comment on it? That was the amendment. There's been so much discussion, I lost track of that one. Okay, we all want to move forward. So on new business item number 3, Councilmember Hernandez.
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration
Mayor.
possible action resolution number R2019-15. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As of the completion of last year's budget, the city's overall portfolio was a little bit over $243 million. Over the past 10 years, and even prior to that, the city has managed that portfolio in what I would say in a passive manner. We obviously were good stewards of that portfolio. We managed that portfolio. We provided you with quarterly updates regarding our actual financial status. However, what we didn't do was actively utilize that portfolio in the market. And what we're recommending at this particular time is that we take a more active management in the stewardship of that portfolio. Tonight, we're recommending that you enter into an agreement with Valley View Consulting LLC for a one-year term with the ability to extend that for another year should both parties be in agreement with that. The company that we are recommending, Valley View Consulting Services, they are well-known in the state of Texas. They're one of a few services that actually deal with municipal governments and their overall portfolios. So we're recommending that we enter into an agreement with them for investment advisory services for this next year. They currently have agreements and work with other cities, the city of Missouri City, Deer Park, Round Rock, and Tyler, just to name a few. We have experience with this particular company in regards to our depository services. They help us analyze those each year when we go over that, and they've been a good partner with us. So you might be asking yourself, did we do an RFP for this service? And the answer is no, we didn't do an RFP. As I mentioned, this is one of a couple of firms that do an outstanding job. Because of our experience with them, we believe that if we went ahead and did an RFP, that we'd be in the same place where we are right now, recommending this particular firm for your consideration. They do an outstanding job. We recommend approval, and we recommend moving forward with this agreement. The owner of the company is here just for information purposes, and if you had any questions of him, he'd be pleased to answer those questions. But we are recommending that we move forward with this investment advisory services agreement. The total cost will not exceed $50,000 based on our current portfolio. The bank depository services that we currently have in the amount of $7,500 will also be incorporated into this particular contract. And we'd be pleased to answer any questions you might have regarding this matter.
Carbone?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess first to clarify, you said it's a one-year contract?
That's correct.
Okay. When I'm looking at appendix, when I'm looking at the contract itself, to me, it looks like it's through the end of 2020. I know the motion calls it out as a one-year contract, so we might want to make sure we clarify that. It says it'll remain in effect through December 31st of 2020.
Yeah, what we are recommending, what staff's recommending right now is it would have the one-year renewal option with mutual agreement by both the city and the Valley View Consulting.
Okay. All right, well, I guess before we execute this, if legal will make sure, I think staff's intent, and if I vote for this, it'll be for the 1 year, just to try it out. Can you help me understand a little bit more on what we've done in the past and what this agreement will provide in terms of, I mean, is this an active management? Because the way I read it is they provide us advice but don't necessarily make the security purchases.
That's correct. What they will do is they will provide us, they will be monitoring our portfolio on a daily basis, and they'll be looking at the overall investment market, be looking at interest rates, et cetera, and then they will be making recommendations to staff. They actually won't do anything. That information will be provided to staff, and then staff will actually make those investments.
Okay. I mean, I know this is upgrade from where we've been, but is there not an active management? I mean, typically your agreements are, hey, here's the agreement. This is our investment scope or guidelines or policy, and then they invest the money. This kind of seems like they're going to give us advice, but it still has to come back to staff to execute the trades. Have we looked at or is that even a possibility? Because I think some other cities do that.
I'll let Rhonda Doherty, our assistant director, comment on that. But from my perspective, I think we ultimately want to be the ones that make those decisions based on advisement.
That is correct. We want to keep a non-discretionary advisory services where Mr. Long and his staff will, they're going to monitor the market and tell us what investments that are best for our portfolio and for our needs. And Mr. Long is here if you would like to speak with him.
Councilmember Carbone, does that directly answer your question?
It does, but I'll let the expert tell us about your industry. And is this standard as?
Would you mind giving us your name and address for the
Yes,
purpose of
Mayor.
the record, because it's being recorded?
Dick Long, Valley View Consulting, Huddleston, Virginia.
Yeah. I know who you
Yes,
are,
sir. What you're describing, several topics kind of up here, but the idea behind discretionary or non-discretionary management. Discretionary management is where you provide funds to a manager, they do whatever they want to it, and they just send back a report that says, here's how we managed your money. It's a little bit more, I shouldn't say a little bit, it is more appropriate for a total return portfolio, such as a pension or an OPEB or a trust, something along that line. The types of funds that are involved in the city's portfolio are the day-to-day operating funds, the ongoing CIP projects that have a timeline where the money is going to need to be spent. So it's more appropriate to use what's called a non-discretionary manager, where we interact on a regular basis with staff. And one of the biggest things we're interacting on is projecting that cash flow and updating that cash flow so that investment isn't inadvertently made beyond when that those funds might need to be spent. And so, again, from a pension standpoint, active management, discretionary management, total return management would be the terms used. That would definitely be more appropriate. But in the case of operating money, CIP money, a non-discretionary manager who is just augmenting what your staff could do is the more appropriate approach.
All right, thank you. And are you from here in Texas?
Yes, sir, originally, and for most of my career, due to marrying a foreigner, I had to move back to Virginia a few years ago. So I just commute to Texas regularly.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Council, one of the things that I did not mention is the cost for this, we believe, will easily be paid for by the increases that we'll see in our overall portfolio. If we were to bring somebody on specifically to provide this service, we feel like it'd be more than double the cost of their proposed service. So we feel like it's a great opportunity for us to better overall manage our portfolio.
I have just a couple of questions, just for clarification, or maybe so I can better understand it. So this is not, based on the statements you were using, discretion, non-discretionary, this is not investment. It's not in a long-term investment where we're trying to maximize a return over a 20 or 30-year life cycle, correct? These are just, we have significant funds, they have to go into an account. We're just making sure that the accounts are accessible, but are trying to gain as much as they can while they sit in the accounts. Am I understanding that correct?
Correct. We like to use the term optimize. So we know that you're collecting tax money right now. You're going to need to make payroll in July, and you're going to need to make debt service in August. And so we have a very defined timeline. And so our role is to work with the staff and figure out what the best way to earn interest between now and July is for that payroll, and best chance to earn interest between now and August when you make that debt service payment.
So just for an example, as opposed to putting this into a bank savings account, what kind of investments would you help us to direct, and what kind of advantage would we have to just a standard savings account?
Actually, that's a large part of our role, and I guess, again, in this environment, that would be the definition between passive and active. Our active role is to look for the various options that are available, that are eligible in your adopted investment policy and governed by the Public Funds Investment Act, and choose the best one. Right now, bank deposits actually are very good. Bank CDs out to July or August would be the highest yielding investment that would be eligible under your policy, and so there would be a good chance we're going to be recommending some bank deposits of different types. In a few years, the market could shift, and we could be looking at other investment options, but right now, bank products are very attractive.
And your service is to keep in charge of that market, and when you see that there's an advantage in another investment strategy, you let us know and say, shift everything out of the CDs and move them over here, and because we expect you'll get a higher rate of return. I'm oversimplifying it, obviously.
Yeah, the short answer is yes. We wouldn't necessarily say liquidate things and shift, but definitely as the strategy progressed, as the markets evolved, we would change where the money would be placed. That's correct.
Okay. And what kind of, I know you can't be locked into this, but what kind of advantage would we have financially from year to year based on the value of our account? You don't have to say anything that's
because that is always the hard thing, and the markets have evolved. We had projected some numbers last fall, and it was multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars. Again, a lot's changed since Christmas in the markets, but a lot of it will depend upon your cash flows. So again, you'll be updated regularly, as mentioned, the quarterly investment reports, and we're available to come help present those if the council thinks that would be important. And it'll be mapped out fairly clearly.
But in theory, you would well more than pay for yourself.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I guess just, if I can add real quick, I know it's, I think in the contract it's your fee plus travel expenses, so I'm cool with the conference call.
No, sir, we absorb all travel expenses. We want to make sure we're available if it's important to you.
Really? All right. See you monthly.
Yeah, well.
If we vote to approve this contract, when does it go into effect?
It would go into effect at the February 1st.
It's actually almost a 2-year contract.
Well, sir, can I bring that up? And I apologize. Early in our discussions, a normal contract is a 2-year contract, and so I'm sure the draft that was included in your packet had that original 2-year date in there, but since then we have had additional conversations with the city, and it was deemed to do a 1 year with a possible extension. So I apologize if that language in the agreement's a little dated, but we'll make sure that it reads as per the council's desires.
Thank you.
And to clarify, the resolution that you're voting on will only authorize the 1-year term, and so the contract will have to be modified to reflect that.
I guess one thing, you list out the other areas here, Missouri City, Round Rock, and Deer Park. Did we get in touch with those two?
Yes, sir. I reached out to them individually. I didn't get responses from each one of them, but I spoke to Missouri City and I spoke directly with Deer Park, and they both are recommend them highly.
I guess, where were we slipping at as a city of not really taking care of business on this?
I would say that we've been doing an excellent job of managing our portfolio. It's been it's been passive. Now we want to do it from a very active standpoint. Interest rates have changed. It's been pretty stable over the last 10 years. Now's the right time to take a look at it from a more active standpoint.
So recommendations that y'all would give, it'd be verbal recommendations back to the city, emails, phone calls, or what?
Yeah, all the above, yes. We would, again, we'd review the investment policy and make sure it was up to date. Then we would have face-to-face meetings. We think that's important to facilitate communication, where we'd go through the cash flows. The city has some historical records that we can analyze, but we may need to build off of that database to get more detailed information. But we would come up with a strategic plan. We would talk to the staff about that plan, and then once that was approved, we would then work on an implementation. Usually that implementation is gradual and do a little bit here, a little bit there, instead of doing it all at once. And so it would progress through until everything was implemented the way he thought it would work. In your case, again, your natural cash flow cycle would dictate that this time of the year we'll be doing different things than we'll be doing in August and September when you're at your low part of your cash flow cycle. So our interaction will be based on the cash flow and the bond issuance and things like that that you have planned, and however it needs to make the city's objectives.
I know I sat on a bank board and we just went over this last Thursday, talking about it and what the feds were going to do. We don't see anything. It's going to be active over the next two, on raising the Fed rates. But we turned around and we knew that on our CDs, 100,000 and above, that we were going to have to increase the rates on those. And so that's what we looked at, and that's what we implemented to do.
Any other question or comment on this item from staff report? Don't hear anything. We have a motion second on the floor, Mr. Secretary.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Aye.
Councilmember Little. Councilmember Moore.
Aye.
Councilmember Owens.
Aye.
Councilmember Carbone.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Perez.
Aye.
Motion passed 7-0.
Okay, with that good information tucked up in the nice package, move to item 4, Councilmember Little.
Consideration and possible action, resolution number R 2019-14. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We're in discussion. Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, we're recommending changes to our engineering design criteria manual. That design criteria manual is utilized to provide direction to the development and engineering community for the design and construction of public infrastructure that ultimately will be taken over by the city after acceptance. There's several proposed changes to the EDCM, including but not limited to construction plan requirements, water system design, sanitary, sewer design, drainage system design criteria, roadway design criteria, and stormwater management, to name a few. At this time, Robert Upton, Director of Capital Projects and Engineering, he's going to lead you through the overall proposed changes. At the conclusion of his presentation, we'd be pleased to answer any questions you might have. I do want to mention that there are some text amendments and other minor amendments that we feel like from a cleanup standpoint, we realize we have to finalize, and Robert will talk maybe a little bit about those as well. But we're recommending approval of it this evening. And Robert, if you wouldn't mind going through a presentation, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Branson. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a quick overview of the changes we've been working on these past couple years. Since we adopted the last EDCM in basically in 2016. So just to give a little background on that. In 2007, the EDCM was updated, but it was used as a guideline and was not formally adopted by council at that time. In 2015, we hired Freese & Nichols to come and review our EDCM at that time, the 2007 document, to then provide recommendations and updates to those changes to make it a comprehensive document. And we brought that before you October 24th of 16 to adopt those changes. From that standpoint, one of the items that we've always recommended to staff is we go through a period of time and review those documents to see as designs change, new products are out there, preferences within the design community, and also the infrastructure needs that we have as the operators and owners of that infrastructure. We need to update and make sure we provide clear direction for those items to the engineering and also construction community. So I'm going to go briefly through several items, but as Mr. Branson mentioned, we did meet with one of the Councilman Perez this afternoon. He did have a few recommended changes. These are minor in nature. They don't dissuade from the intent of the recommended changes, but just a couple clarifications. So I'll highlight a couple of those as we go along. But in Chapter 1 is our general information document. This just included some new references to relevant laws and regulations that we follow, included some definitions to provide those definitions so we all are working on the same terminology within these documents. Also, since we've gone to an electronic track it program and we submit our plans and specifications from the development community to review via electronically, this provides the procedure and how we do that. And we also have in there created a variance procedure. This is a big item for us in Chapter 1, and this provided that a formalized process to submit any variances that a developer or engineer may have to our criteria so we can evaluate to see if it meets the intent. In there as well, one of the items is also just to include and make sure we also reference not only Brazoria Drainage District number 4 as our drainage partner, but also Harris County Flood Control District as well. So there's one item in that was brought forth. And then also in Chapter 1.7, there is a survey item in there, and taking forth a recommendation to try and get recent survey data is that it should be a recent survey within 12 months. So we've added that to the criteria since it was submitted to you. Chapter 2 is our construction plan procedure of things that we want to see. So we've included in that to highlight geotechnical report, a traffic impact analysis at that time of submittal, a drainage report, water and wastewater design analysis reports. These are highlighted later in the document, but they're part of the submission process, so we identified those needs that needed to be included. And also, to help facilitate working in our easements and maintaining our infrastructure, our underground infrastructure especially, is to make sure we have a clear area of 20 feet minimum for water and sewer infrastructure. This is needed to get equipment in and also to have enough room to adequately repair our facilities as necessary. Chapter 3 is our water design procedures. So in there, as stated earlier, is require a water system design report, measure where we've been working on a water system model. This information will be provided to the consultants. They can use that to model their system to make sure that we have proper circulation in our system and provide the best quality and highest quality water content to our customers. Also, clarification of testing requirements for when new infrastructure is in place. And then we provided some clarification on detail on approved products that we want to utilize. So in this, we reference our approved products list. These are products that we want in our system. And so that document resides outside, but in the engineering and public works department, and can be modified from time to time, but it is referenced in here so that we have the products that we want to keep and maintain on our shelves. Chapter 4 is our sanitary system design criteria. Again, there's clarifications to general area. In there as well, we want to talk about making sure we maintain the slopes and grades of our infrastructure correctly. So we've updated that and made sure that we can maintain proper flows. We've also maintained some clarifications on our manhole construction with coatings. This is important so that this infrastructure lasts, especially in the realm of hydrogen sulfide gas that does eat away concrete. These coatings are important, so we have test cased many of them, and these are selected the ones that we want to be able to have the longest life and the best warranty. And so they're listed in this in the document. And finally, as lift stations are needed, if necessary, gravity is always a priority. But if a lift station is required for a project, there is design criteria necessary for that to meet. This includes the type of panel, the infrastructure inside, and how we operate our infrastructure so that it's built uniformly and we have standards, and to also standardize our equipment. Chapter 5 is working with our drainage, our storm water design criteria. We've identified and brought some information in that this is important to provide. It provides some information on our community rating system to show how important meeting our drainage and stormwater criteria are. We updated several items within there regarding some of our clarifications that we had. There was some confusion in our community, in the engineering community, and so we've clarified those. We also clarified some detention requirements for what small, medium, and large projects are. Small meaning the residential type projects are infill projects for single-family homes. Previous requirements required detention for those. We analyze those and take a look to make sure that they fit accordingly and drainage can handle with the infrastructure, so we don't have little small wading ponds in single-family homes and infill lots. However, criteria still is going to be required for commercial lots. Those are 2 acres and under. That's what's defined as a small project. That was a recommendation that was brought forth today, so we'll clarify that. And then one thing that helps us out is standardization of report requirements. This will pop up several times in our documentation, is to have a standardized report format so that it is easier to maintain, the engineering community knows what we expect, and then we're able to review them quickly and more efficiently. Chapter 6 is our roadway design criteria. This went through and we provided some highlights on what our cross sections look like on a visual representation that's in there in your document. We also have really expanded a lot of our design criteria for intersections or gated communities to make sure that there's adequate turnaround for our emergency services or for residents or the vehicular traffic who may make a mistake and can't get into a gated community, and they need a turnaround spot instead of backing out onto the street and causing a potential traffic hazard. This provided a formal detail. We also have provided sight triangles. These are visual areas so that a vehicle coming to a perpendicular or a T intersection has plenty of sight distance to look both directions and have a clear movement to make a left or right-hand turn while seeing oncoming traffic or cross traffic, so that vegetation or monuments are not in the way and they don't have to keep edging out and potentially getting what we call clipped or the front end of their vehicle hit on a vehicle traveling perpendicular to them. And we've also taken a look at driveway spacing and providing some criteria with residential commercial driveways in that process. Chapter 7 is our traffic design criteria or our traffic impact analysis. We've clarified what our requirements are. We've provided some information on draft vehicle trips for typical uses with regards to different types of commercials, so that when we meet for the workshop with the owner and the traffic engineer, there's a basis of design already started. They can take a look at what those requirements are. We also require that a worksheet is provided so we can help gauge and define that TIA process, determine the level. We also have developed a table in there defining if you have a certain amount of average daily trips or peak hour trips. Those are then determining what you need to do in a report in terms of going out and evaluating access into the site from 0 to a quarter mile to half mile. And if you're a really large project that has a tremendous impact to the area, how far out is that? And that is a mile to take a look around of all the impact in that area. We provided a standardization for the format for the report. Like I said, this will help us with the community to more efficiently review our reports because they will be in the same format. We'll be looking for the same information. We provided definitions for what we mean by certain terminology, so that's a standardization. And we also developed a checklist at the end, so to make sure that the engineering community knows what we're looking for, and they can also provide that to make sure all their information is complete. Chapter 8 is our stormwater management. As recently passed back in December was our illicit discharge ordinance. We've just changed and updated this stormwater management or our stormwater pollution prevention chapter to reflect that, included that information in there from that recent adoption of that ordinance. Now we're getting into 4 new chapters that we spent time adding to the engineering design criteria manual. We broke out and provided a specific chapter for our traffic signals. This provided design criteria, design format, decorative poles that we look for, all the guts was what I'll say inside our traffic box. So we have standardization among there and what type of equipment that we look for. So this was provided there so that we can start seeing standardization among our signals. And the design community who may be responsible for having to install a traffic signal has the guidance already. Chapter 10 is quality control. We summarized a lot of our information that we have from our own infrastructure requirements on the public side when the city goes out and puts out projects for bid and has our own specifications. We want to make sure our development community is also following a lot of those testing procedures and criteria. So we created this chapter that has a lot of that criteria in it so that the infrastructure that they're putting in is also being tested the way we would test it as our own project. Chapter 11 is our GIS standards. This is a new chapter with regards to having our projects, that development community of the infrastructure, submit in what we call geospatial files. Those GIS files then can be easily and readily updated quickly into our GIS system without having to do a bunch of conversions from AutoCAD files or MicroStation files. These are already then formatted with line types. We have a little bit of a change on one of our tables to remove HLNP and put Centerpoint in because it was a standardized table. And so we will make that change. But this is to help our staff and also the development community give the format necessary to quickly and accurately upload that information into the GIS system. And finally, Chapter 12 is just a miscellaneous. This is there's about 3 topics in there that don't really fit with any other chapter within the EDCM. And these include, example is the approved products list that I mentioned earlier. It just says that this may be updated from time to time, but does not reside in this document. It resides in the Engineering and Public Works Department, and we will update that from time to time as products are approved within the departments. And then also, there is a section in there for our design standards or design detail drawings. And those will also be updated from time to time as information is necessary or changes need to be made. And we'll always update that on our website, but we didn't want them to reside in this document, so any changes would have to come back to council all the time. So those 2 items are put out and in the control of city staff. With that, that concludes my presentation that I have, and open to any questions. But as stated earlier by Mr. Branson, that there's a few minor changes. We have a couple grammar items that will provide a little bit more clarification. We'll address those based on our conversation tonight and have that finalized and then ready for mayor's signature when that's all incorporated.
Robert, it's an area I don't know very much about, but great job. I can tell a lot of work went into this, so I appreciate all the effort.
Thank you, sir.
I think it's an impressive improvement on the one we have. Also, have any question or comment on this item?
I've got one real quick. On the silt screening that we do on each one of the contracts, you go out by there, and that's probably the most pitiful thing that you ever see. I mean, they're mashed down, and nobody's in charge of them, taking control of them, and it just gets to a point of irritation that we go through some of these areas out here that we're doing construction, and they put the silt screening up, which we pay for in the contract, but I mean, it's just not being watched or looked at. I mean, part of them's laying over on the roadway, part of them's pushed back on the right of way, and so I don't know. It's just a point that nothing's ever done to them out there. I don't know how. Do we inspect those to make sure that they're working and should be holding stuff out of our inlets and what have you?
Absolutely. We inspect those, and if there's ever a point that you see that there's an issue, you let us know, and we'll get out there immediately, but we inspect all of our public infrastructure.
Councilman Owen, that is correct, is that we do inspect. I have an inspector that is dedicated to that, driving throughout the community, especially on the private development side. I'll tell you, on Friday, I was driving through as well, and I noted some areas and called my inspection staff, and they immediately turned around and came out and addressed those. Same with on the construction side. I was also had a project too that I noticed some track out, and called my construction inspector as well and responded, and then had photos later that afternoon saying that the area was cleaned up with photographs from the street sweeper as well. So
yeah,
we
it seems
do
like
that.
the most of it is on these commercial sites and what have you. That they put it out, but they never come back and do anything with it. It's laying over out in the middle of the roadway or back on the right of way. But and the other thing too, on the traffic side, I know that we limit 18-wheelers on. They pretty well on farm to market roads, but not on Pearland Parkway, which they do come down Pearland Parkway. and some of the other areas. And, that, as well as I do, that, one 18-wheeler causes much damage to about 7,000 vehicles, regular pickup or cars running down and damage those. But as we continue to let other things go out, like, gas stations and different places, and they're off of the beaten path, and they've got to get their gas somewhere or the other. But it seems like some of our roadways are not capable of carrying that kind of load in through there. So I don't know what we do about that, because some of the development goes on in areas that, they have to get out there some way or another, but it does tear up our asphalt roadways.
Yes, sir. Councilman Owen for that statement is, but we do have designated truck routes throughout the city. However, should a delivery have to go to a certain aspect and it is the most direct route, unfortunately, we are unable to impede that. However, those are our limitations, is that if it's a fuel delivery, as you're talking about, that needs to get off the beaten path to an area and it's their direct route, then that is the route that they have the opportunity to travel, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's like on Pearland Parkway that, people come off the Beltway. Of course, they can't go on a Beltway on some of it, but, with the gas stations out there, the 18-wheelers have to come in on the locations out there to deliver their gas to those areas. And a lot of them take other areas in, as far as being able to get other 18-wheelers out there. A lot of them are not only the gas stations, but they have different deliveries for food, and they sell food and stuff out there. So there are other trucks coming in. Do we stay on top of that the best we can, or keeping 18-wheelers off of our side streets?
We do the best we can. We continue to work with PD. I do know that, and PD has their commercial inspection.
Yeah, we still have 2 truck enforcement officers full-time. So we answer any calls that we get on complaints, and then we work with them also on working with, and we actually go out and do presentations for trucking companies, let them know what we're looking for and what they need to abide by.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So I may have missed it in here, but I was looking for, or maybe I'm not sure of the terminology. Some of the I don't want to call them turn lanes, but they are turn lanes, specifically on like Highway 35, specifically the one that you would turn if you're going south on 35 to make a right turn onto Walnut. Some of those little forced turn lanes are very, very narrow, extremely narrow. And I know y'all engineers have told me this before. The way to control speed is to make something more narrow, and it slows everybody down. But some of those are pretty narrow, especially the other one on 35, if you was coming south on 35 to make a left turn into over by like the Church's Chicken strip plaza over there. That's very narrow for a turn also. Is there anything in here that describes the criteria for how wide those should be or need to be? If they were any smaller, it would be very difficult to go through those.
Yeah. What we'll have on a couple items with regards to that is there's driveway width radius requirements and driveway width for commercial items, commercial properties along each of our roadways. But taking a look at turn lane or deceleration lanes, I think is what you're asking about, or a dedicated right turn lane at a signal light. Am I correct?
No, they're not specifically at a signal light, but they could be, yes.
Okay.
The one up near the churches is not at a light. The one at 35 and Walnut is at a light.
Robert, I think it means the slip lefts.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not sure of the right terminology. So
about the slip right. They're gonna those are gonna be driveway width predicated into the development or into the commercial development, but then also with the design. 35, of course, being a state highway, they're going to dictate that more with TxDOT. We usually take a look on 12-foot type widths or 11-foot type widths. They may have tried to squeeze that in based on their own what was left on the dimensions, but I'm unable to answer that question because of the fact that TxDOT probably designed that road and had their designers on that one. But we take a look to make sure we have safe travel.
Okay, thanks. Because I know one of them, it might have been 35 going northbound at Walnut. I think maybe that one was removed. There was one of them removed somewhere over there, and it was a pile of concrete because everybody just kept running over it. It was so narrow, it was difficult to make that turn. So I hate to see, money being spent on doing stuff like that, and then it gets torn up because it's not usable or whatever, and it just seems like it's a waste of time and money to do that if it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing, or people are just running over it anyway. So.
Any other question or comment from council?
Just quickly, Mayor, I'd like to thank staff for tolerating me for the hour before the meeting, going over a bunch of detailed stuff in the manual. We made some minor modifications. Nothing changes the intent, but I really appreciate the time and effort staff put into this.
Mm-hmm. Well, as we've grown, we need policies and procedures that make us avoid problems that we could avoid by not being aware of them and not working with them. So I think I've been really impressed with this particular one. So, council, have any other question or comment? Hearing none, we had a motion second on the floor, Mr. Secretary.
Councilmember Little? Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Carbone?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Motion passed 7-0.
Moving on our agenda to item number 8, Mayor and Council issues for City Council discussion. John Branson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As item 8 reads, this item was brought forth by at least 2 city council members. It relates to the city's grease trap ordinance, section 23-1.1. That section prohibits multiple users from sharing a single grease trap. There's a number of reasons why that is part of the requirement, but accumulation of fat, soil, and grease is really the single biggest factor regarding sewer blockages and overflows. And what this does is it helps prevent that from occurring by making sure that only one food handler or operator has a specific grease trap and we're not feeding multiples into one. There are also federal and state regulations that require cities to develop these types of ordinances and guidelines. The ordinance that we have in place, we believe it's a good one, and we do not recommend any changes to it. I realize it's an issue that came to light recently. We were made aware specifically of this incident when a strip center development was occurring, and on their plans, they had submitted plans that showed a 250-gallon grease trap that was specifically dedicated for their dumpster. When we went out to inspect the location, they had a 2,500-gallon grease trap that was designed to connect multiple users of that particular facility. So it came to light there. It was brought probably to your attention for the same reason. Why does the city do this? As I mentioned, we believe we've got a great ordinance here. What I'd like to do before we entertain any questions or comments, Clarence Whitwer, he is our Public Works Director. He actually spoke at a previous meeting. I'd like to formally introduce him. He's our new Public Works Director. Clarence, welcome aboard. And then he's going to make a couple of comments about this ordinance. Clarence?
Mayor, Council, thank you. Good evening. I'm going to run through this real fast. I don't think anybody in this room has actually seen me do one of these yet. So you're either going to love it or I'm going to get fired tomorrow. But I don't mess around. So John Branson actually already stole most of my thunder. I think he covered it nicely. Just real quick, he gave you the background, and I want to go into really the reasons why. The biggest reasons is sizing is one of them. When they go to the pre-development meetings, we are very clear in there the sizing calculations in order to make sure it's the right size. And the reasons for that are, if it's undersized, that's obvious. You're going to have overflow or blockages. But if it's oversized, and we've actually ran into this, Pearland, in a shared strip center, a shared grease trap at a strip center in the past, businesses move out of that center and it's no longer maintained. The water gets stagnant in the grease trap and you start having odors go down through the plumbing in multiple establishments in the strip center. We've actually experienced that. One of the other real big issues is it doesn't allow us to pinpoint who the responsible party is, which we're charged to do with running a pretreatment program. If you have 3 establishments in one strip center and the grease trap is not being maintained, these establishments hooked to it, when we go out there with city staff, code enforcement, the right crew, everybody that's hooked, first thing that's going to happen is if they don't get it fixed, is water is actually going to be terminated to those businesses. And under the law, if they don't have the water, they can't stay open. So I'm almost going to close it here. John can maybe keep talking, but I try to use a visual. And I'll use Councilman Hernandez, for instance. We got to visit his business here recently. I was pretty impressed, but just say for one day you decided to start doing kolaches, which I know would go against the juice thing, but you would probably have to have a grease trap. And if in your same strip center there was a Tex-Mex and an Italian food restaurant, those people are definitely going to be putting out more grease than what you're putting out in kolaches. So if it wasn't being maintained by the owner of the strip center or whoever, then everybody would get shut down until it was fixed. And is just not fair to any. You can see in your packets, there's a chart that shows what our sister cities are doing. In our industry in general, the only real exceptions to this you'll see are like malls that have food courts and hospitals that have multiple like little food courts in them, like Memorial Hermann does. And that is because those people have on-site maintenance that are guaranteed pretty much around the clock. So in a nutshell, that's why we don't do it.
Thank you, Clarence. This was a council item that was brought forward, so we're open to your direction.
Do we have a regular inspection routine set up for these like we do for the health people checking restaurants and eating establishments?
Yes, we do, Mayor, and I'm looking over at Lori Rodriguez, our pre-treatment coordinator. Is it twice a year or once a year? Twice a year.
Twice a year. Okay. But the grease trap is projected for when you develop a grease trap for a business. You kind of project what the industry size ought to be because of once a year you dump a lot of grease in, you know.
Well, that's just our inspection. Typically, most businesses have a service that come by and service it on a regular basis. What we do is inspect it twice a year.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's good. Council, have any question or comment on this?
Yes, Mayor, I do. What specifically what are you inspecting?
Lori, if you would, please go to the podium. As I mentioned, Lori is our pre-treatment coordinator. She does an excellent job above and beyond her staff inspecting grease traps. She is involved in a number of different environmental issues for the city. Lori?
I want to step in real quick, Mr. Branson, just to clarify. Lori was recently promoted. She is our new environmental services superintendent. So she is now over multiple departments.
Thank you. So back to your question regarding what we do when we do our inspections, we're checking to make certain they're getting pumped out at the required maintenance intervals. Per our ordinance, it's quarterly. Some we have more stringent pump out requirements. So we're just verifying that it is getting pumped out, that their manifests are maintained on site. We're also doing visual inspections of the grease trap. We open them up, make certain that there's no solids flowing through in the sample well into the city sewer, that everything's being maintained inside the grease trap. We're making certain there's not excessive solids in there. And we're also making certain that everything is, that the grease trap itself is still has its integrity, you know, that there's not broken pipes or anything like that inside the trap.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Well, we have an expert up there.
Thank you, Mayor. I was the one that originally requested this item to be on. I mean, I think generally there's pros and cons to the approach, whether we do it regionally or whether we do it individually. I'm a fan of doing it regionally because the responsible party would be the individual that owns the shopping center. If you allow it to be regional, you're not tearing to the pavement quite so often as restaurants come in and out, move in and out, change and modify what they're doing. If again, it's similar with what we do with a regional pond that serves a number of businesses all at the same location. Like if it's Kroger and they have a number of pad sites, they go to regional pond. In that case, we would make each of them responsible to prove that they have capacity within the regional pond. We would do the same with the regional grease trap. And it's kind of a similar approach to the water meter. We have a shopping center. There's one water meter for the shopping center. How they're individually metered is between the landowner and the individual tenants. We don't want to have to deal with individual meters for individual tenants. That becomes more difficult. I think it's in my opinion, the same philosophy should be on the sanitary side. I think it's cleaner. I think it's better. If we have it regionally and allow it to be maintained regionally. I read through the Thursday packet when it came out, and I don't disagree with some of the comments that are made, but I do disagree with the sentiment that these things can be oversized. If they're oversized, that just means they're maintained less because the grease is not stacking up so much that they have to be maintained every other week or once a month. It can be stretched out to every 2 months. So, I think I would prefer, or in my opinion, I would prefer us to allow for the regional to be an option. I think we can still hold everybody accountable. And I think with the landlord being accountable for the grease trap and them having to deal with that with each individual tenant, I think that's more favorable to us because we can go after that individual landowner as opposed to there's 2 restaurants in a strip center. One decides to leave and never cleans its trap, then who's responsible for cleaning that? And the other restaurant is going to be the one that's negatively hurt because the smells are escaping. There's no tenant there. There's no individual that's particularly responsible. And as we try and go after the landowner, we'd be in the same situation we would be if it was regional. Again, not to trivialize the rationale for doing it per individual. I certainly don't think it should stretch property lines. But I do think that if we have one shopping center that could have restaurants move in and out of it at various times, or have restaurants change over time, having the regional grease trap is better for us as a city, and better for the tenants, and better for the landowner.
Just one more quick question. So bringing that up, going back to the inspections, if there is a grease trap there, but there's not a tenant in there, or there's a tenant in there that does not necessarily need the grease trap, then what happens to the grease trap? I mean, y'all are still inspecting the grease trap, and they're still responsible for maintaining it, correct?
If there's a tenant that has a grease trap and they're not required to have one, so if, for example, you have a shoe store or a dentist move into where it was previously a restaurant, we would require them to make certain that it's emptied and have it filled and bypassed. So, because as long as there's a grease trap.
So it'd have to be filled with sand or something like that.
That's correct.
So in that kind of scenario, so the shopping center just north of Lowe's is the one I designed. We put a regional trap in there. I think at the time, that criteria is not. I think it's hard to find because it's an amendment to the plumbing code. So it's not in the EDCM. You've got to know it's there. At that point, I don't recall that being made aware to us. But there was a restaurant that came in and they put in a grease trap when they installed. It's not a failing that they have individual grease traps, but you have 2 sanitary sewer service lines that come out of a restaurant. One goes to the grease and one goes to the sanitary. If there's nothing that goes to the grease, then it just goes unused. You don't necessarily have to fill it up. There's nothing in there. It's an empty vessel. But most of the tenants, if you're going to do a shopping center and you want to attract a restaurant, the restaurants are the better tenants. They're going to go kind of aggressively go after this. This would be a tool for them to aggressively go after it. And I doubt that they would end up not having one. If they don't want to have a restaurant, they probably won't put in a sprinkler system or a grease trap or any other accommodations for restaurants, and they would eliminate that as a leasing possibility. But I mean, too much into the details. I do think the more regional that we have the more regional we are with detention, the more regional we are with a meter to serve the entire development, the more regional we are with the grease traps. The less time we have to spend inspecting 4 grease traps per property, the less time we have to deal with managing 3 or 4 different individuals. I think it's better, easier for the tenants, better and easier for the landlord, better and easier for city staff.
I tend to agree with you. I was in this situation where I had a grease trap at one of my sites, and Galveston County Health Department came out every quarter. They inspected every quarter. I had to show them proof of manifest that we pumped it out, et cetera, and we didn't even use it. It wasn't in service. So the only option I had was to fill it up with sand. And once I'd done that, they'd come inspect it, and then they wouldn't inspect it anymore. So I don't know. I tend to agree with you as far as the regional ones, because you could put in a shoe store there. Well, that shoe store now is going to be responsible for maintaining that grease trap, whether there's something in it or not. They're going to have to go through the inspection, and it's just I think it's more time on our part. It's more money on our part by having to manage that with code inspectors on it, and it's an unwanted thing for a business that doesn't necessarily need a grease trap.
And I just wanted to lend my support to a lot of things that my colleagues have been saying up here. That's I've been in multiple situations now where I've been in the shared grease trap situations. Excuse me. We haven't encountered any issues up to that point. I mean, it seems to run pretty smoothly. And it does help if there are issues in the future for leasing out of space. It does make it more attractive, makes it easier if the space is vacant. I mean, you could say the same for, smells and odors and things like that could come from any floor sink or floor drain that just sits, you don't have a tenant in there, they're going to stink. So, I think this is something that will save us time, energy, effort. So I'm behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
This initiative came up several years ago, back when Marvin Summer was around. He used to say, slime in the ice machine. There was somebody made some kind of comment to him one time, and so he asked, "Is there grease in your grease traps?" And we got it sort of made everybody wake up, and we did some checking and found out that we had some real grease trap policies violated, and nobody was checking on them. So I'm glad to see that we're taking a look at that, because it can be a mess. We had some real problems with backflowing and all over the driveways. And,
Right down here.
yeah, yeah, it's pretty local, and so it was everything local then. But
I guess on, Perez, on your thought with the regional, that would be new developments. To do regional, it'd be hard to come back on existing commercial developments to do regional, but on new ones coming in. Okay.
Everybody feel comfortable with the grease in your trap?
I guess, can staff, I'm no expert. We're hearing from staff, they like the way it is, it works, and with our knowledge up here, we're saying, no, this will save you time, money, and this will be better. What are we missing?
I'd like to ask Clarence to make a few comments, and then Lori to follow up with that, just to let you know what that will do if we change it to allowing a regional, a regional collection system. Clarence, you want to make a couple comments?
Thank you, Mr. Branson. It's just going to be a couple because Lori's definitely our expert in the room. The biggest thing that we need to keep in mind before we go changing anything is that we are working towards becoming what is called a recognized pretreatment program in the state of Texas. And once that happens, if we do obtain that, I know her team's been working hard towards that, we will have much more specific criteria and verbiage and a lot of these things where we will have, and it will concentrate on generators of the waste, which goes down to even if you have a shared trap, each person on that. So just something for us to keep in mind that we may hopefully soon get that designation, or at least one day. And if we were to change it, we might just have to change it back again. So just something to keep in mind. We'll certainly follow council's direction.
And absolutely, whatever you all direct, will do. But Laura, do you want to provide any additional comments about issues that you've seen regarding where we've had multiple at one establishment?
Trying to think. There's quite a few issues that I've come across personally, and I understand, where you're coming from and your perspective. From my perspective, when I'm seeing these grease traps, and we see businesses come in and come and go. Today, that grease trap may be sufficient, and the way grease traps work, if there's not water flowing, that water becomes stagnant. And that's what generates that odor, not having moving water. So if you have an undersized trap because you don't have, a business that just doesn't have that water flow to push it through, that's what's going to get that really strong, gas odor that's going to be maintained there in the trap. Likewise, if you get businesses that it's just too much loadings for one grease trap, you start running into pushing grease quickly through the system, and as it cools down and gets further, you start getting blockages in the line. So we're trying to be preventative to try to prevent these issues from occurring and trying to help everybody maintain a good environment as well. And the last comment I just have to make, and I know I mentioned it in my memo as well, any issues that arise such as an overflow, that reflects back on our permits at our wastewater treatment plants. It's a violation. And even though the treatment plant didn't cause it, it may have been caused because of somebody in a restaurant or for not maintaining their trap. It's still a violation on the plant. And if the city doesn't do anything to show that we're mitigating that, it can end up causing a fine or cause us to be in trouble with our permit, and that's what we're trying to prevent.
Yeah, I think all those things are absolutely important, but I do think that they exist whether or not we regionalize the traps or not. I mean, for all of those arguments, it would be the same for individual traps as opposed to a regional trap. It is important that we have these, and it's important that they get maintained. Having been around this for a while, I feel for these shopping centers, it's easier and better for all involved if they have the option to be regional. I wouldn't say that we have a prohibition against having them, allowing them to have individual traps, but relieve ourselves of the prohibition of them being allowed to have a regional. And fundamentally, it's just one line that we have as an amendment to the plumbing code.
And I guess to me, it seems like there's an example that somebody came into pre-development, we told them no. We said, yeah, we're cool at 250. They don't change their plans, and then on final inspection, we realized that they completely changed it up and went from one to a regional one, and we're now changing our whole ordinance to pull this person. I don't know who they are, and I'll probably hear from them tomorrow if I know them, but it seems like we're going through all this mess because somebody screwed up and didn't listen to us at pre-development.
No, I think their screw-ups independent of the policy. If they say it's a 250-gallon trap and they put in a 2,500, they screwed up. I mean, that doesn't, whether it's for an individual or for a regional, it's still a screw-up, and they still have other issues. I know when I design shopping centers, I design them with a regional trap. I would prefer that we follow that because I think it's a better design. It doesn't alleviate anybody of their screw-ups. It's the same thing as if, they call on the plans that they're going to have a 4-inch meter and they go out and install a 6-inch meter. They're still screwed up, independent of our ordinance. The plans were reviewed falsely, and they've got to go back and get them re-reviewed and reapproved, and everything's got to be re-verified. I think they're two separate issues. But again, I think, at very least for the purpose of the discussion item, I think we have enough council members that are interested in seeing this, the possibility of nullifying this change to the plumbing code. If there's enough for staff to just present it as an actionable item on a future agenda, and then, if we feel that it's an appropriate move, we can vote for it, and if not, then we vote against it.
So, Mr. Mayor, so far I've heard 3 people say yes, regional, but I haven't heard a fourth. If there's a fourth, we'll move forward with it. If not, I think we're in good shape.
Okay. When you greet somebody in Pearland, ask them if they've got gas, grease in their trap.
Yes.
I believe
Any other comments from council?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I don't think we've, so far I've heard 3 that,
I think member Litters.
okay.
Is there not a fourth?
I guess,
Oh, I think
Yeah.
member Litter said. Member Little said yes.
that might be a yes, but I'd like to see a little bit more. And I guess going back, you said it's amendment, so the plumbing code, whatever national we've got to follow, says you can do regional,
Yeah,
and Pearland's calling it out and saying, no, you can't.
exactly. The plumbing, it is not inherent in the International Plumbing Code. We make a local amendment to state that we will not allow 2 businesses to. So per the International Plumbing Code, it is permitted.
Okay. Based on that, I'd be in favor, but then I guess in terms of the new certification or whatever, not that I don't know. I mean, we're Tree City and Bird City and all this, and now we're going to be Sewer City or Grease City, and I'm not trivializing what you do at all, but another certification's another certification. I'm sure there's something good behind it, but maybe if you could provide that at the next meeting when we take action.
So we appreciate all the input tonight, and we'll take this back, and we can provide that type of information. One thing I do want to state is as we go back and look at this, and is that instead of going just straight back to the plumbing code, is that what we may bring forth is, once we've talked about it, is that there's some sort of parameters around it, where the owner of the shopping center has some guidance as to what they've got to provide from a on-call service to make sure if there are any sanitary sewer overflows or any blockages, that those get addressed, and we've got, the right people to call, because right now it's real easy to say, hey, this trap goes to that restaurant. They're the culprit. We can go deal with it immediately. When it's shared, we've got to have somebody to deal with and put a little bit of parameters around that, and therefore get those businesses back open or get their issue alleviated. And I'm sure they'll have the phone numbers as well, but just we've seen some ordinances that have some parameters around that. So we'll look at that as well and bring something back to you.
You feel you have answers on that, John?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, let's move then in our agenda to executive session. Under Texas Government Code, Section 551.072, consultation with city attorney regarding the sale, lease, exchange of real property. Obviously, in executive session, we can discuss this item with the staff and those individuals with whom we have invited into the session, but we cannot make a decision in executive session. And action will be brought back to the table for the council to make a decision. So at this time, we will recess into executive session at, I'd say it'll be 8:45, 8:46. And moving to item number 6, consideration possible action regarding the sale, lease, or purchase or exchange of real property.
Yes, Mayor, I'm going to recommend two separate motions related to that item. The first item is going to deal with specifically with the Walnut property. And so that motion would be authorizing staff to proceed with the sale of the property, two properties on Walnut, as discussed in exec session.
Take them separately.
That's the first one, and I think we're going to take action on that one separately. And then I'll have.
All right. What's the council's pleasure? Do I hear a motion second? Have a motion second, Mr. Secretary?
Councilmember Carbone?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Absent from chamber.
Well, is absent from the chambers. Councilmember Perez?
Abstain.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Little?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Let's see, motion passed 5-0 with one abstention and Councilmember Reed absent from the chambers.
And Mayor, there will be a second component to a motion related to this item, and that would be authorizing staff to proceed with the acquisition of real property for drainage and detention purposes as discussed in executive session.
So moved. Second.
Second.
Motion second or discussion? We have a motion second. We have motion second on the floor, Mr. Secretary.
Councilmember Carbone?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Little?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Motion passed 6-0 with Councilmember Reed absent from the chambers.
Yeah, still absent. Just walked in. That complete?
Yes, sir, complete 6.
Okay. Moving in our agenda to other business, there is none. Item number 9 will allow me to adjourn this agenda. And thank everybody for the job you've done today, and I appreciate that very much.